There's a myth in professional football that refuses to die. The myth of the fresh start. The idea that a coach can pack his bags, board a private jet, land in a new city, and somehow become a different person. That the failures of the past can be left behind like luggage at baggage claim. That a new logo on your chest erases the stains on your resume. It sounds nice. It sells hope. And it's complete nonsense. Yesterday, we witnessed the violent death of this myth in real time. A coach walked into his introductory press conference expecting handshakes and softball questions. He got an interrogation. He came prepared for a coronation. He received a cross-examination. The reporters in that room didn't care about his new suit or his fresh haircut. They cared about one thing only: the receipts. And the receipts don't lie. What happened in that press conference should serve as a warning to every coach in this league who thinks they can outrun their history. Because in the NFL, your record follows you, your failures follow you, and no amount of optimism can shield you from the cold, hard truth of what you've done or what you've failed to do. Kevin Stefanski walked into that Atlanta Falcons facility looking like a man ready for his moment. The suit was crisp, team colors, perfect fit. The lapel pin was gleaming under those studio lights. Falcons logo, polished to perfection. His hair was styled, gel perfectly applied. Every detail calculated to project confidence and control. This was supposed to be his redemption arc, his fresh chapter, his opportunity to rewrite a story that had gone horribly wrong in Cleveland. But something was off from the very first question. See, Stefanski made a critical miscalculation. He assumed that because he was in a new city, the rules had changed. He assumed that the Atlanta media would treat him the way new hires are traditionally treated, with kid gloves, with optimism, with the benefit of the doubt. He expected questions about culture and vision and excitement for the future. That's not what he got. The very first question cut straight to the bone. A reporter looked him dead in the eyes and reminded him of something he clearly wanted to forget. The Atlanta Falcons have endured 8 consecutive losing seasons, 8 years of disappointment, 8 years of watching other teams compete for championships while they spiraled deeper into mediocrity. And then came the follow-up that made Stefanski's polished facade begin to crack. What makes you believe you're the right guy for this job? And not just the right guy, but the guy who can turn it around quickly? You could see it in his body language, the subtle shift, the momentary hesitation. He wasn't ready for this. He came prepared for a welcome party and walked straight into an ambush. His answer was pure corporate speak. The kind of empty rhetoric that sounds good but means absolutely nothing. I believe in this group. I believe in this roster. I believe in what Arthur and Matt have put together. Belief. That was his answer. Not a plan, not a strategy, not a single concrete detail about how he intends to fix what's broken. Just belief. As if faith alone can win football games. As if optimism can overcome the mountain of evidence that suggests he's not the answer. The reporters weren't buying it. And frankly, neither should the fans, because here's the thing about that press conference. It exposed a fundamental disconnect between who Stefanski thinks he is and who his record says he actually is. He carried himself like a proven winner. He spoke with the confidence of a coach with multiple championships, but his resume tells a completely different story. And the media in Atlanta, unlike perhaps the media he was used to, had clearly done their homework. They came with questions that demanded accountability. They came with follow-ups that wouldn't let him wiggle away. They came to do their jobs, and their job was to represent a fan base that has been burned too many times to accept empty promises. The honeymoon phase is supposed to be sacred in sports. That brief window where everyone pretends the new hire is perfect, where flaws are overlooked and potential is celebrated. It's supposed to last weeks, sometimes months. Stefanski's honeymoon didn't even last through the press conference. By the time he walked out of that room, the narrative had already been written. Not by his carefully prepared talking points, but by his inability to answer basic questions about his past. The sweat on his brow told the story. The hesitation in his voice revealed the truth. He expected roses and got thorns instead. And the worst part? This was the easy part. This was just talking to reporters, just answering questions, just sitting in a room with no game on the line. If he looked this rattled during a press conference, what happens when the Falcons drop 3 straight games? What happens when the boos start echoing through that building he wants to shake with excitement? The welcome party is over before it even began, and the real tests haven't even started yet. Atlanta wanted a savior. What they got was a man who couldn't even save himself from basic questions about his own history. The warning signs are flashing, and if the Falcons organization is paying attention, They should be very, very concerned about what comes next. Let's talk about what Kevin Stefanski is running from, because you cannot understand the disaster of that press conference without understanding the 6 years that preceded it. 6 years in Cleveland. 6 years that were supposed to establish him as one of the brightest minds in football. 6 years that ended with a pink slip and a plane ticket to Atlanta. When Stefanski arrived in Cleveland back in 2020, the hype was real. He was the hot young coordinator, the offensive genius. The guy who was going to transform the Browns into contenders, and for exactly 1 season, it looked like the hype might be justified. That first year, Stefanski led Cleveland to the playoffs. They actually won a playoff game. He was named Coach of the Year. The future seemed blindingly bright. And then reality set in. Year after year, the Browns regressed. The offense that looked innovative in year 1 became predictable. The adjustments that other teams made went unanswered. The roster that was supposed to be loaded with talent somehow never performed to its potential, and the record reflected it. Approximately 37 wins and 42 losses over his tenure. A losing record for a team that was supposed to be built to compete. But the record alone doesn't capture the full scope of the failure. You have to look at the quarterback situation to truly understand what went wrong. Because that position, more than any other, is where a coach proves his worth. And Stefanski's handling of his quarterbacks was nothing short of catastrophic. It started with Baker Mayfield, the first overall pick, the guy who was supposed to be the franchise cornerstone. Under Stefanski's guidance, Baker's numbers declined every single season. His confidence eroded. His performance suffered. The relationship deteriorated until it became toxic. And when Baker finally left Cleveland, something remarkable happened. He went to Tampa Bay and turned into a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. Same player, different coach, completely different results. Then came the Deshaun Watson disaster. And disaster is not a strong enough word for what happened. Cleveland traded a fortune in draft picks. They handed Watson a fully guaranteed contract worth $230 million. It was the most guaranteed money in NFL history at the time. And what did they get in return? Injuries. Inconsistency. Controversy. Watson never came close to justifying that investment, and the franchise is still paying the price for that decision. Stefanski cycled through quarterbacks like they were disposable. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got his shot, showed some flashes, never developed. Jameis Winston came in. Same story. The carousel kept spinning, but nobody ever grabbed the brass ring. And through it all, Stefanski kept talking about his system, his process, his belief in the players. Belief. There's that word again. The Deshaun Watson situation deserves special attention because it represents everything wrong with Stefanski's tenure. Here was a quarterback with elite physical tools, a proven track record of success in Houston, all the talent you could ask for. And under Stefanski's leadership, Watson looked like a shell of his former self. You can blame the injuries. You can blame the controversy surrounding his off-field issues. But at some point, the coach has to take responsibility for the product on the field, and the product was unwatchable. This is the resume that Stefanski brought to Atlanta. This is the history he was trying to escape. And this is why the reporters in that press conference refused to let him off the hook. They had done the research. They had watched the tape. They knew that behind the polished exterior was a coach who had failed to develop talent, failed to adjust his system, failed to build anything sustainable in one of the most quarterback-rich eras in NFL history. 6 seasons is not a small sample size. It's an eternity in coaching years. It's enough time to build a dynasty or destroy a franchise. Stefanski had every resource imaginable: high draft picks, talented rosters, front office support, and he still couldn't get it done. The Browns are now rebuilding from the rubble of his tenure, and he gets to waltz into Atlanta and pretend none of it happened. The receipts say otherwise. The tape says otherwise. And the reporters who grilled him yesterday made sure everyone watching knew exactly what Atlanta is getting. Not a fresh start, not a redemption story, but a coach with a proven track record of underperformance trying desperately to convince everyone that this time will be different. History suggests it won't be. There was one moment in that press conference that made people watching at home nearly spit out their coffee. One statement so disconnected from reality that it bordered on comedy. When asked about developing quarterbacks, specifically about his plan for Michael Penix Jr., Stefanski looked into those cameras with complete sincerity and said something unforgettable. Player development. I'm a maniac about it. I'm just crazy about development of our players. A maniac. That's the word he used. Crazy about development. As if saying it with enough conviction could somehow make it true. As if the entire football world hadn't spent the last 6 years watching him systematically fail to develop every quarterback who came through his system. Let's examine this claim against the actual evidence. Because in football, unlike politics, you can't just say things and expect people to ignore the tape. Baker Mayfield came to Cleveland as the first overall pick. A Heisman Trophy winner. A competitor with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. He had raw talent and electric playmaking ability. In a functional system with proper development, Baker should have become a perennial Pro Bowler. Instead, his game regressed year after year under Stefanski's guidance. His completion percentage dropped. His decision-making deteriorated. His confidence visibly crumbled. By the end, he looked like a quarterback who had forgotten how to play the position. The relationship between player and coach had become so toxic that a separation was inevitable. Cleveland shipped him out, and then something incredible happened. Baker Mayfield went to Tampa Bay and became exactly the player everyone thought he could be. His numbers exploded. Over 4,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns. He led the Buccaneers to the playoffs. He signed a massive contract extension. He became the unquestioned franchise quarterback that Cleveland had desperately needed him to become. Same player, same arm, same competitive fire, different coaching, different system, different results. If Kevin Stefanski is truly a maniac about quarterback development, how do you explain Baker Mayfield? How do you explain a quarterback who couldn't function in your system, suddenly thriving the moment he escaped it? The only logical conclusion is that the problem wasn't Baker. The problem was the man calling himself a development guru. And Baker isn't the only evidence in this case. Look at what happened with Deshaun Watson. Before Cleveland, Watson was considered one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in football. His years in Houston were spectacular. He could throw from any platform. He could extend plays. He could make throws that other quarterbacks couldn't even attempt. He was a legitimate superstar. Under Stefanski's coaching, Watson became unrecognizable. Yes, injuries played a role, but injuries happen to everyone. The best coaches find ways to work around limitations. They adjust their systems. They put their players in positions to succeed despite physical challenges. Stefanski seemed incapable of any such adaptation. Watson looked lost, confused, unsure of himself. The swagger was gone. The magic had disappeared. Even the backup quarterbacks suffered the same fate. Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in with raw talent and the athletic ability to make plays. He showed flashes, brief moments where you could see the potential, but he never developed consistency. Never took that next step that separates backups from starters. Under a true developmental coach, those flashes should have become sustained success. Instead, they remain just flashes. This is the man who stood at a podium in Atlanta and called himself a maniac about development. This is the coach who wants Michael Penix Jr., and the Falcons faithful to believe he can nurture young talent. The audacity is almost impressive if it weren't so insulting to everyone who watched the Cleveland catastrophe unfold. Michael Penix Jr. should be concerned. Deeply concerned. He was drafted in the first round with the expectation that he would become the franchise quarterback of the future. His development is critical to Atlanta's long-term success. And now his development is in the hands of a man who has demonstrated zero ability to develop quarterbacks at the professional level. The Falcons didn't just hire a coach with a losing record. They hired a coach with a specific, documented pattern of failure at the most important position in sports. And for Stefanski to stand there and claim he's crazy about development shows either a complete lack of self-awareness or a willingness to say anything to sell himself to his new employers. Either way, it doesn't inspire confidence. Actions speak louder than press conference platitudes, and Stefanski's actions in Cleveland scream one thing loud and clear. Quarterbacks who stay in his system struggle. Quarterbacks who leave his system thrive. That's not the resume of a developmental maniac. That's the resume of a developmental liability. And Michael Penix Jr. might be his next victim. When the reporters in Atlanta brought up Baker Mayfield's name, something changed in Kevin Stefanski's demeanor. The polished confidence wavered. The rehearsed answers became stammered responses. The body language shifted from comfortable to cornered, because Baker Mayfield isn't just a former player. He's a living, breathing contradiction to everything Stefanski claims to be. The question was straightforward. Baker Mayfield had made comments about looking forward to seeing Stefanski twice a year. About looking forward to that NFC South rivalry. Were you surprised by those comments? Watch the response carefully. Stefanski tried to take the high road. He gave the diplomatic answer that every PR coach would recommend. Baker is somebody I have a ton of respect for as a player and a person. I love rivalries in sports. The Buccaneers and Falcons have a great rivalry. I'm excited about it. But then came the tell. The moment that revealed everything. I would not get into the specifics of those type of things. He wouldn't get into the specifics. And why not? Because the specifics are devastating to his narrative. Because the specifics expose the truth about what happened in Cleveland. Because the specifics show a coach who failed his quarterback and is now terrified of facing the consequences. Baker Mayfield isn't just excited about those matchups. He's hungry for them. He's been waiting for this opportunity. Every success he's had in Tampa Bay has been accompanied by a silent asterisk that points directly at Cleveland. Every touchdown pass is a message. Every victory is a statement. Look what I can do when I'm not being mismanaged. And now he gets to deliver that message directly, twice a year, on national television, with the whole world watching. The dynamic between these two is fascinating because it is completely flipped. When Baker was in Cleveland, Stefanski held all the power. He was the coach. He controlled the system. He made the decisions that shaped Baker's career. Baker was essentially at his mercy. And Stefanski used that power to push Baker out the door. Now look at who holds the leverage. Baker is the established franchise quarterback of a playoff team. He's got the stats. He's got the contract. He's got the narrative on his side. Stefanski is the failed coach trying to rebuild his reputation in a new city with a skeptical fan base. The power dynamic has reversed completely. And Baker knows it. Those comments about looking forward to facing Stefanski weren't casual remarks. They were calculated. They were intentional. Baker is letting the world know that he remembers what happened, and he's ready to make Stefanski pay for it on the field. Consider what those matchups will look like from Stefanski's perspective. Every time Baker completes a deep pass, it's an indictment of Cleveland's decision-making. Every time Baker leads a game-winning drive, it validates what everyone suspected. Every time Baker outperforms whatever quarterback Stefanski trots out there, the comparison will be unavoidable. And the media will make sure everyone notices. They'll run the split screens. They'll show the statistics. They'll remind viewers that these two have history. The storyline is too good to ignore. Stefanski won't be able to escape it. He'll be asked about Baker before every Bucs game and after every Bucs game. The ghost of Cleveland will follow him into every press conference. This is why he looked so uncomfortable when the question was asked. This is why he deflected. This is why he refused to engage with the specifics. He knows what's coming. He knows those games are going to be personal. He knows Baker is going to be extra motivated. And he knows the narrative is already written. Baker Mayfield's success in Tampa Bay isn't just a personal achievement. It's a public referendum on Stefanski's coaching ability. Every good thing Baker does reflects poorly on the man who couldn't figure out how to use him. Every accolade Baker earns is another piece of evidence in the case against Cleveland's former coach. And unlike courtroom evidence, this proof is displayed on national television every Sunday. Millions of viewers watching. Millions of people drawing their own conclusions. Stefanski can try to change the subject. He can talk about believing in his current roster. He can praise the Atlanta organization. But he cannot outrun Baker Mayfield because Baker is right there in the same division. Waiting, ready, twice a year, every year for as long as Stefanski stays employed in Atlanta. The rivalry isn't just Buccaneers versus Falcons. It's Baker Mayfield versus the coach who failed him. And based on recent history, smart money is on Baker. He's already won the first battle. He won it by thriving without Stefanski. Now he gets the chance to win the war. Every coaching hire comes with inherited problems, challenges left behind by the previous regime, roster decisions that can't be undone, contract situations that limit flexibility. Kevin Stefanski walked into one of the messiest quarterback situations in recent memory, and given his track record with quarterbacks, the concern should be through the roof. Let's break down what he's walking into. The Atlanta Falcons made a stunning decision in the 2024 NFL Draft. With their first-round pick, they selected Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, a talented quarterback with a cannon arm and proven college success. Under normal circumstances, this would be cause for celebration. A franchise quarterback for the future. But these weren't normal circumstances. Just months before that draft, Atlanta had signed Kirk Cousins to a massive free agent contract. They had committed serious money to a veteran quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. The plan, apparently, was for Cousins to bridge the gap while a young quarterback developed behind him. On paper, it made some sense. In practice, it created chaos. Cousins struggled throughout the 2024 season. The Achilles injury clearly affected his mobility and confidence. The timing in the pocket was off. The deep ball accuracy that once defined his game had disappeared. Atlanta's offense sputtered. The losses mounted, and eventually the inevitable happened. Michael Penix Jr. was thrust into the starting role. Penix showed flashes. He demonstrated the arm talent that made him a first-round pick. He made some throws that only a handful of quarterbacks in the league can make, but he also showed the rawness you'd expect from a young player. The decision-making wasn't always crisp. The pocket presence needed work. The consistency wasn't there. This is exactly the type of project that requires expert developmental coaching. A young quarterback with elite physical tools but rough edges that need polishing. In the right hands, Penix could become a franchise cornerstone. In the wrong hands, he could become another cautionary tale. And now his development is Kevin Stefanski's responsibility. Given everything we know about Stefanski's history with quarterbacks, the concern is legitimate. He couldn't develop Baker Mayfield. He couldn't maximize Deshaun Watson. He couldn't elevate any of the young players who came through Cleveland. What reason is there to believe he'll suddenly figure it out with Penix? The challenge is significant. Penix needs patience and structure. He needs a coach who can identify his weaknesses and design a plan to address them. He needs someone who can adapt their system to his strengths rather than forcing him into a scheme that doesn't fit. He needs what Stefanski has consistently failed to provide. And there's another layer to this situation. The Kirk Cousins contract is still on the books. The financial implications of that deal limit what Atlanta can do elsewhere on the roster. They essentially paid premium money for a quarterback who couldn't deliver and now have to navigate the consequences. Stefanski inherits this mess. He has to figure out how to build around a young quarterback while dealing with the cap implications of a failed veteran signing. The pressure on Penix is enormous. He's not just trying to develop as a player. He's trying to justify a first-round investment while also replacing a highly paid veteran who didn't work out. The fan base wants results. The ownership wants results. And the new coach has given no indication that he knows how to produce those results at the quarterback position. This is where the rubber meets the road for Stefanski. He can talk about believing in the roster all day. He can call himself a maniac about development until his voice goes hoarse. But at some point, the games start. And when the games start, Michael Penix Jr. either develops or he doesn't. Either Stefanski proves his critics wrong or he confirms what everyone suspects. The early returns are not encouraging, not because of anything Penix has done, but because of the pattern that Stefanski has established. Young quarterbacks in his system don't grow. They stagnate. They regress. They leave and find success elsewhere. The evidence is overwhelming. Atlanta fans have every right to be nervous. They've watched 8 years of losing football. They've watched coaching changes that led nowhere. They've watched promising players fail to develop. And now they're supposed to believe that this coach, with this specific track record, is going to be different. Hope is not a strategy, and belief without evidence is delusion. Michael Penix Jr. deserves better than platitudes. He deserves a coach who has demonstrated the ability to develop young talent. Whether he got that coach is a question that will answer itself over the coming seasons. But based on history, the smart bet isn't encouraging. While Kevin Stefanski was sweating through his disaster of a press conference in Atlanta, something very different was happening in Jacksonville. A story that illustrates the other side of the NFL coaching equation. A story about leverage, value, and knowing your worth. Grant Udinsky is staying in Jacksonville, and the details of how that happened tell you everything you need to know about how this business really works. Udinsky, the Jaguars' offensive coordinator, had options. He had been interviewing for head coaching positions. His name was on lists. Teams were interested. He had the leverage that comes from being a rising star in a league that's always looking for the next great mind. He could have left. He could have chased the big job, the big title, the opportunity to run his own show. Instead, he signed a new deal to remain exactly where he was. Him and defensive coordinator Anthony Campbell both. The key phrase in every report about this decision, Agreed to terms. Those 3 words contain multitudes. Agreed to terms means negotiations happened. It means numbers were discussed. It means Jacksonville ownership looked at the situation, calculated the cost of losing their coordinators, and decided to pay the price to keep them. They backed up the money truck and made it rain. This is how you handle leverage in the NFL. You don't beg. You don't plead. You demonstrate your value and let the market work in your favor. Udinsky had teams calling. He had interest from organizations looking for head coaches. And Jacksonville responded by making him an offer he couldn't refuse. The contrast with Stefanski's situation is stark. Stefanski left Cleveland with a losing record and a reputation in shambles. He needed Atlanta more than Atlanta needed him. He had no leverage. He had to sell himself, had to convince a skeptical room that his past failures wouldn't define his future. He's starting from a position of weakness. Udinsky is operating from a position of strength. He's valued, he's wanted, he's in demand, and he's getting paid accordingly. The Jaguars didn't just retain a coordinator. They made an investment in continuity. They recognized that replacing good coaches is expensive and disruptive. Better to keep what's working than to start over with an unknown quantity. This is a lesson that organizations across the league need to learn. The carousel of coaching changes rarely produces the results teams hope for. More often, it produces exactly what Atlanta is experiencing right now: uncertainty, skepticism. Press conferences filled with tough questions and unsatisfying answers. Stability has value. Continuity has value. And sometimes, the best move is paying to keep what you have rather than gambling on what you might find. Jacksonville clearly understands this. They looked at their coordinator situation and decided the most expensive thing they could do was let talented coaches walk. So they paid. And Udinsky, recognizing his value and understanding the market, accepted. He's not chasing a head coaching job just for the title. He's willing to wait for the right opportunity while getting compensated handsomely for his patience. Meanwhile, Stefanski chased the fresh start. He ran from Cleveland to Atlanta hoping that distance would equal redemption. He wanted the title. He wanted the authority. He wanted the chance to prove himself again. And what did he get? A press conference that exposed him. A fan base that's already skeptical. A quarterback situation that might be unsolvable. And the pressure of knowing that failure this time means there probably won't be another chance. The lesson here is clear. Leverage matters. Value matters. How you enter a situation determines how you'll be treated within that situation. Udinsky entered his contract extension from a position of strength. Stefanski entered his new job from a position of desperation. And it showed immediately. Think about the messages being sent. In Jacksonville, the organization is telling its coaches that they're valued, that they're wanted, that the team is willing to invest in keeping talented people around. That kind of environment breeds loyalty and effort. Coaches who feel appreciated tend to perform better. It's human nature. In Atlanta, the message is more complicated. We hired you because we needed someone, and you were available. Prove to us that you're not the same guy who failed in Cleveland. Show us that you can do what you couldn't do before. That kind of environment breeds anxiety and pressure. Coaches who feel they're constantly auditioning tend to make desperate decisions. Udinsky is cashing checks and building for the future. Stefanski is already defending his past. It's a study in contrasts. And as the season unfolds, these contrasting dynamics will play out in real time. One coach operating with confidence and security. Another coach operating with doubt and scrutiny. The outcomes might be very different indeed. While the coaching drama unfolds across the league, another story has the internet completely divided. A story that exposes the changing nature of NFL prestige and what accolades actually mean in the modern era. Shedeur Sanders is going to the Pro Bowl, and a significant portion of the football world has lost their collective minds about it. The reaction has been intense. Social media exploded with criticism. He doesn't deserve it. It's nepotism. He's only there because of his father. He's just an alternate. It doesn't count. The hate has been relentless, the vitriol has been personal, and almost all of it misses the point entirely. Yes, Shedeur Sanders got into the Pro Bowl as an alternate. That's a fact. Multiple quarterbacks ahead of him on the list either declined the invitation or couldn't attend due to injury. Patrick Mahomes is hurt. Bo Nix is hurt. Lamar Jackson decided he had better things to do. Aaron Rodgers looked at the schedule and passed. The list kept shrinking and eventually it reached Shedeur's name. But here's what the critics refuse to acknowledge. That's exactly how this works. Every year, alternates get called up. Every year, players make the Pro Bowl because someone ahead of them couldn't or wouldn't go. This isn't new. This isn't special treatment. This is the system operating exactly as designed. Shannon Sharpe made the essential point on his podcast, and it's worth repeating until everyone understands it. The record book doesn't have asterisks. When historians look back at careers, when analysts compile statistics, when the Hall of Fame committee evaluates candidates, nobody asks whether you were the first selection or the fourth alternate. Nobody cares that Lamar Jackson was busy or that Aaron Rodgers wasn't interested. All that matters is the line on your resume. Pro Bowl selection. 1 time, 2 times, whatever the number ends up being, that's what history records. Sharpe went further, explaining how the Pro Bowl has changed over the years. Back in the day, this meant something different. It meant a trip to Hawaii. It meant bringing your family to paradise. It meant sipping cocktails on the beach with the greatest players in the league. It meant a real vacation, a real reward, a real celebration of your status as an elite performer. Now, it's not the same attraction. The game itself has been watered down. The competition isn't what it used to be. The stars often opt out because they don't see the value. They'd rather rest their bodies than risk injury in a meaningless exhibition. The prestige has faded, but the credential remains, and that's what matters for Shedeur Sanders. He's a Pro Bowl player now, regardless of how he got there, regardless of who said no before him, regardless of the circumstances that led to his selection. The fact is the fact. It's in the books. It's on his resume. And no amount of internet complaining is going to erase it. What's fascinating about the backlash is how much it reveals about the people doing the complaining. These are the same folks who would tell a young player to seize every opportunity, to say yes when others say no, to show up when others stay home. Half of success in any field is simply being present when others aren't. Shedeur Sanders did exactly that. He answered the call, he accepted the honor, and he handled it with grace. His response to the selection was notably mature. He thanked the fans first. He acknowledged the support he's received. He didn't brag. He didn't gloat. He showed appreciation for an opportunity that came his way. This directly contradicts the narrative that he's some entitled player who only cares about himself. If anything, his reaction demonstrated exactly the kind of character that teams want to see. The Pro Bowl controversy is really a symptom of a larger issue. People want reasons to hate certain players. They've decided that Shedeur Sanders doesn't deserve success, probably because of his father, probably because of the attention he receives, probably because he's confident in a way that makes some people uncomfortable. So they look for any excuse to diminish his accomplishments. But accomplishments are accomplishments. Getting into the Pro Bowl, even as an alternate, puts you in a category that most players never reach. Most quarterbacks in the NFL will never be selected. Most players across all positions will never make that roster. The fact that some bigger names said no doesn't diminish the fact that Shedeur's name was on the list at all. The haters will stay mad. That's what haters do. But the resume is updated. The accolade is earned. And Shedeur Sanders moves forward with one more line of validation that his path is heading in the right direction. Let the critics scream into the void. History will record what actually happened. Step back from the individual stories and a pattern emerges. A theme that connects everything we've discussed. The common thread running through the Stefanski disaster, the Udinsky extension, and the Sanders selection. That thread is reality. Cold, unforgiving, inescapable reality. Kevin Stefanski is trying to hide from reality. He packed his bags in Cleveland and flew to Atlanta hoping that geography would provide absolution. He walked into that press conference believing that a new city meant a clean slate. He genuinely seemed to think that the questions about his past wouldn't follow him, that the failures would stay behind, that he could reinvent himself simply by changing his address. That's not how reality works. In the NFL, your record follows you everywhere. The tape doesn't lie. The statistics don't disappear. The quarterbacks you failed to develop don't suddenly forget what happened. Baker Mayfield is still out there, thriving in Tampa, serving as a constant reminder of what Stefanski couldn't accomplish. The receipts travel, and no matter how far you run, they eventually catch up. The press conference proved it. The reporters came prepared. They brought the evidence. They asked the questions that needed asking. And Stefanski had no good answers because there are no good answers. You cannot explain away 6 years of mediocrity. You cannot spin failure into success. You can only face reality or be destroyed by it. Grant Udinsky represents a different relationship with reality. He sees the situation clearly. He understands his value. He recognizes that the market rewards those who have leverage and punishes those who don't. He didn't run from Jacksonville. He didn't chase a title for the sake of the title. He assessed the reality of his options and made the smart play. He stayed where he was valued, secured the bag, and positioned himself for future opportunities without burning bridges. This is what it looks like to work with reality instead of against it. Udinsky isn't deluding himself about his circumstances. He's not pretending to be something he isn't. He's operating with clear eyes and making decisions based on actual facts rather than wishful thinking. The result is security, stability, a foundation to build on. Shedeur Sanders is accepting reality. The reality that the Pro Bowl isn't what it used to be. The reality that alternates get called up every single year. The reality that an accolade is an accolade regardless of how you earned it. He didn't make excuses. He didn't decline out of some misplaced sense of purity. He accepted the honor, thanked the people who supported him, and added a line to his resume that will matter for the rest of his career. The critics wanted him to reject reality. They wanted him to say no because he wasn't the first choice. They wanted him to share their strange standard that only counts achievements earned under perfect circumstances. But Shedeur lives in the real world. In the real world, you take the opportunities that come your way. You show up when others don't. You build your legacy one piece at a time. These 3 stories illustrate 3 different approaches to the same fundamental truth. Reality cannot be escaped. It can only be faced. Stefanski is learning this the hard way. His attempt to escape reality is already failing. The questions he dodged in that press conference will keep coming. The comparisons to Cleveland will intensify as the season progresses. Every loss will be examined through the lens of his past failures. Every quarterback struggle will be attributed to his inability to develop the position. He cannot outrun who he is because who he is defined by what he's done. The prediction writes itself. If day 1 was this rough, imagine what happens when adversity hits. Imagine the press conferences after a 3-game losing streak. Imagine the questions when Michael Penix Jr. struggles. Imagine the scrutiny when Baker Mayfield lights up the Falcons' defense. The storm is coming, and Stefanski has already shown he's not equipped to handle it. Atlanta wanted certainty. They wanted a coach who could walk in and command respect through past achievements. Instead, they got a question mark. A coach who has to prove he's different. A coach whose biggest selling point is claiming he's learned from his failures without demonstrating that he actually has. The building in Atlanta might shake someday, but it won't shake with the excitement Stefanski promised. It will shake with the anxiety of a fan base watching the same patterns repeat themselves. New city, same problems, different uniform, identical questions. Reality always wins, always. The only choice is whether you face it with eyes open or get blindsided by its inevitable arrival. So where does this leave us? The NFL coaching carousel keeps spinning, but the lessons remain the same. Your past defines your present. Your record follows you everywhere. And no amount of fresh suits or polished talking points can substitute for actual results. Kevin Stefanski's welcome party turned into a warning sign. The honeymoon is over before it began. The questions he couldn't answer yesterday will only get louder tomorrow. Atlanta wanted a savior and might have hired a liability instead. Grant Udinsky showed how leverage works when you have it. Shedeur Sanders showed how opportunities work when you take them. Both understood something Stefanski seems to have missed. Reality isn't your enemy if you're willing to face it honestly. Keep your eyes on Atlanta. It's going to be a fascinating, likely disastrous watch. Keep your eyes on those Buccaneers matchups. Baker Mayfield has revenge on his mind, and keep your eyes on Shedeur Sanders. He's got a Pro Bowl nod and the fuel to prove he belongs. The receipts always matter. The tape doesn't lie. And the truth has a way of finding you no matter how far you try to run. What do you think? Drop it in the comments.